Welcome. I am Shamika Ramlal, and we are here at Mount St. Benedict for the first day of our community festivals, a part of Carifesta 14. And we're here with Abbot John Pereira, the present Abbot for the Mount. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Shanika.
And how are you?
Excellent.
Okay, so tell us, how long has the Mount been in existence?
1912, we were founded, and this is actually the oldest Benedictine monastery in Central America and the Caribbean. We were founded in 1912 from the oldest monastery outside of Europe, which was situated in Brazil, in the state of Salvador in Bahia. And in the early 20th century, there was a threat of religious persecution. There was a Freemasonry government that was anti-clerical, anti-church. And in the name of progress, they were targeting religious communities like the Franciscans and the Benedictines. The monastery in Brazil, from which we were founded, began in 1582. It was founded by the Portuguese monks, and it is the oldest Benedictine monastery outside of Europe. We trace our roots back to Saint Benedict, who founded his monastery in Italy. Now, with the threat of religious persecution in the early 1900s, the abbot of the monastery in Brazil wrote to the Archbishop of Port of Spain at the time. His name was Pius Dowlin, and he asked the Archbishop if it were possible that the monks would be able to migrate or to settle in Trinidad on account of the threat of religious persecution. The Archbishop opened the doors of the country, and he only gave one condition: provided the Benedictine monks would assist with the establishment of parochial life in Trinidad, setting up parishes and assisting where possible. This was accepted, so on the 6th of October 1912, the first 3 monks arrived on this spot, and the rest is history. However, after the Archbishop gave the okay, Dom Mayer de Caini, who was the abbot of the monastery in Brazil, in late 1911, visited Trinidad to reconnoiter the place and to look for possibilities where a monastery would be able to be established. Some person offered him a site in El Tecuch. So there were several sites. One day he was celebrating Mass at St. Joseph Church, which is actually the site of the first capital of Trinidad, called San Jose at the time. And immediately after the celebration of that Mass, an elderly gentleman came to him in the sacristy by the name of Antonio Victorino Gomez, and he told the abbot, who had just completed Mass, that he heard he was looking for possible sites in Trinidad to establish a monastic community, and that he had a property in the hills of Tunapuna which he was willing to sell. So the abbot got rather excited, because he was always looking for possibilities for his monks to come here. And so they started off at the foot of the hill on a donkey. In those days you didn't have buses and roads and so on. And as he got on the donkey, as they made a few passages up the hill, the donkey tripped on a hump, and the abbot fell over into a puddle of mud, and all his clothes were dirtied. But he got up and he said, a bad beginning makes a good ending. And so they continued their journey until they came to this site. Now the abbot, this was a cocoa plantation.
Okay.
The abbot, as he saw the spectacular view, he fell in love with the place, the majestic beauty of the surroundings. As he continued further up the hills, he saw a stream of water flowing through the hills. And he said, this is where I want to establish my monastery. He was looking for a place with a certain level of solitude, away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, because monastic life is really an escape away from, the hustle and bustle of everyday life, to seek God above all things, to spend time in prayer and solitude and so on. He had remembered that in Brazil, he had established a community in a place called Chiara in Santa Cruz in Brazil. And for 6 months every year, there was absolutely no water. It was a very dry place for at least 6 months of the year, and the monks had to look all over to fetch water. Now, the abbot did not want a repeat performance in Trinidad. So when he saw the water flowing through the hills, he says, this is where I'm going to establish my community. So he negotiated with Mr. Gomez, and they came to a price of $4,000, and he bought the property for $4,000, which would have been a lot of money at the time. And he made arrangements to have the land transferred and so on. And he went back. He actually saw this land for the first time in January of 1912. So then he went back to his community in Brazil, and they had their meetings among the monastic community. And eventually, three monks were chosen to set up the community here.
Okay, so in 1912 they established the mount. But how long have you been the abbot of this particular mount?
I was first elected in 2003. Our term of abbot here in our monastic community is for a period of 8 years. Okay. So in 2011, at the end of my first term, there was another election. And I was re-elected by the brothers here to serve a second term. We are now in 2019, so we are due for an election in November. So it's possible that we may have a new abbot from November. But I am now coming to the end of my second term in office.
Okay, so at the end of your term in office, would you be an abbot for another country, or is it that you just move on to serve in the monastery?
I serve as an ordinary monk in the monastery.
Okay.
Under the new abbot, whoever that may be.
Thank you very, very much, Abbot John, for your time, and we look forward to seeing more around the monk.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.